This year, the theme of Black History Month is Black Health and Wellness, according to the group who founded Black History Month. As HYPE members, we wanted to delve deeper into this theme, explaining both why it is important and showing how it connects to our community here at Oak Park and River Forest High School. But first, a bit of background. If we go back into history, we will find many historic reasons that explain why many members of the Black community distrust the American medical system. One famous example is the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, conducted by the United States Public Health Service starting in 1932. The goal was to see the progression and effects of untreated syphilis in African American men, but the subjects were completely unaware of their syphilis diagnosis. Instead, the African American men were told they were receiving treatment for bad blood, when in fact they received no real or effective treatment at all. Without their syphilis treated, around 400 Black men went blind, had damage to their vital organs, and/or died. It was 40 years later when the truth was revealed and the experiment was ended, and still even later when the remaining victims received an apology from the U.S. government. Furthermore, we have seen time and time again that African Americans have been misdiagnosed at much higher rates than white people, and when seeking treatment they are negatively affected by prejudice and discrimination in the U.S. healthcare system. At the same time, seeking mental health care in the Black community is heavily stigmatized. The Black community has faced so much pain and suffering through systemic oppression and racism that many have formed a survivalist mentality and tend to view mental illness as more of a weakness rather than a medical condition needing treatment and support. Now let's hear from some OPRF teachers and students about what impacts their health and wellness and how they positively support their mental health in the face of this history and ongoing racial injustices.
That's a big question. The stigma of African American and just Black mental health as a whole has affected me just because, there's this sort of idea, because a lot of Black trauma that we've had has kind of forced us in a position to try to stay really, really strong and put some of our emotions to the back of our head and not let them come out, especially because African Americans, stereotypically are perceived as, aggressive groups of people, not just African Americans, Black people, globally. That takes a toll on me because, it tries, it definitely hurts because, sometimes you want to let those emotions out and express them a little more, but, because of those stigmas, you feel like you're forced to push them back, so.
There have been challenges about when to say when, how to seek help, and that is nuanced by my profession, which is in the counseling profession, and really trying to be active in stemming the tide of mental health stigma. That is, go to church, pray it away in many cases, when in fact, mental health is a very real thing.
It is really hard and difficult to see people in the Black community suffer. They're not okay, and really trying to change that narrative that getting support is not a sign of weakness. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with you, but it is a way to heal from a lot of the racial trauma that we have experienced.
I think it has affected me in the way where I worked with a lot of Black and brown students that family is kind of against them going to see an outside therapist, and as Ms. Himes stated, I believe the exact numbers, because I'm still in school and I researched it, there's about 4% Black, 4% of the social workers in America are Black, and 2% of psychologists are Black. So there's not a very good representation, and when our Black and brown people want to go see therapists, there's often a cultural disconnect that they have that kind of prevents them from seeking that outside support. So I think that has affected me a lot, because it's really painful to see that so many of our people need help, but the representation is not there for them to feel comfortable enough to seek the help.
First of all, I think there has been a stigma in the Black community. I think poor mental health always seemed to be something that was not related to us. It was us being Black people. It was more things like poverty and the general struggle and so forth, and not mental health. But since the pandemic, I personally have struggled a little bit with poor mental health, and now that I see it in my community a lot, in my family and in my community, I think we need to work harder to lift that stigma that mental health is a real thing, and it's not something to be mocked, and it's not something to be looked down upon.
I think it definitely adds another layer of stress onto the already stressful high school environment, just because I find myself like looking for other people of color in all my classes to make sure I don't like feel like the only one or feel uncomfortable in class. So it's definitely a whole another thing that I have to worry about that most people don't have to worry about.
It was helpful during my tenure to have bosses who looked like me. And during those years, it was a little less challenging, but overall, the system has presented issues like microaggressions, even dealing with the parents too was another thing that has been difficult when I was teaching math and I would teach honors math classes. Oftentimes, the white parents would question my capabilities, my credentials, and that was always hard mentally to wrap my head around, and sometimes caused me to question myself whether I was good enough.
I feel like it's harder for you to feel like you have a sense of belonging when you're not around people who go through the same things that you go through, and it's just, I feel like it's harder to feel like you belong.
Over the years, it's been isolating. It's been, I've had some anger associated with being a singular Black male in most spaces I've worked, primarily in Catholic schools throughout my career. And it created some challenges that were similar to some that I had as a young person, bringing that into my young profession years. But certainly as an older professional, I think putting in the work, sharing my voice, sharing my experience, I believe those have helped in this white spaces, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely impacted my mental health badly. I think for a certain amount of time I was very angry, and I felt very hurt by a lot of the stuff I was seeing. I felt afraid to go out with my friends and afraid to go to school, and feared that if I shared my beliefs or how I was feeling, that I would be invalidated or made fun of. And recently I've been able to sit down and talk about my emotions and understand that like the weight of this issue is not just for me to carry.
The exhaustion in building up a strength force field, when you keep hearing about it and seeing these incidents, you don't want to be desensitized, but it's almost as though, well, you're suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, and there is a disconnect that begins to happen when it's so regular.
I feel like the racial injustices have really affected my mental health, and that, in these past 2 years with COVID and, a lot of other stuff going on, especially as, George Floyd and, the Black Lives Matter protests going full swing in 2020 and 2021, murder of Elijah McClain, and, et cetera. It's been really difficult, just seeing that, as a society, we have not moved past the discrimination against Black people, and seeing that on the news daily and weekly and monthly, when you're already in such a state of not depression but sadness and upsetness due to the pandemic. It's really hard. It's really difficult.
It's important so that if you get too overwhelmed, you don't have a mental breakdown and just all the emotions pile out of you because you don't know how to manage it, and then it makes it hard for you to focus on your schoolwork and do well in your extracurriculars. So that's why it's important.
Just being able to wake up on the right side of the bed and get the day moving with a good mindset, good amount of energy and stuff like that is really what sets the good days apart from the bad. recognizing some of the goodness and, just being able to be grateful to be, alive, be able to function, be able to eat, have a proper meal, sleep, whatever, that's what's really important to me. Yeah.
We are all under a lot of stress, especially with the school year not being on quarantine anymore. And I think it will just help everyone to deal with it better.
I love meditation. Like early in the morning, I get up and I'll listen to a 5-minute meditation, and then if it's late arrival, I'll play the 5-minute and the 17-minute one. And I also really like music. I think music overall is just a very good stress relief. It's gonna sound weird, but I like making smoothies. Making smoothies in general, it's just, number one, the feeling of making a smoothie just tops everything. Number two, they're delicious.
I think kind of what I was saying before, making sure I'm comfortable in the class and getting to know the teacher so that, even if the teacher is white, just knowing that they're educated and that they'll make the space comfortable and safe.
I'll paint and I'll sing and stuff like that, just to help me calm down if I get overwhelmed.
Talking about mental health with students is so critical because it is a health issue and something that is undervalued, in my opinion. Just national scene is the importance of mental and emotional health. People are accustomed to oh, you got to get your annual physical, you got to check your blood pressure, make sure you're eating right, so on. But there are still people who are afraid to address the emotional and mental health concerns and those checks that are necessary.
It's so important that you have an outlet and a resource to, again, help you manage and develop healthy coping skills to deal with trauma, which I feel like every single one of us has a small piece of, especially having been through the pandemic. It's perfectly normal and okay to get therapy, and very important to have some type of therapeutic outlet.
It's important for us to speak to our frailties, our traumas, and it is always, always, always okay to seek help. And professional counseling is important. It's important to seek it out and know that it does help.
This is one more thing that Black people have to deal with, and I think communicating about it, with your other Black family, other Black peers, other Black friends, colleagues, and so forth, will really help. First of all, the communication, I think, is the key. And then if there's help to be sought, seek for the help.
I will want to say to you that you're not alone. There's more people out here who are going through the same things, and it's okay to express your feelings and go seek help from other higher people to fix it, talk about it if you need to.
First of all, it's okay to not be okay. I mean, we are right now dealing with a lot, and the first step is to admitting that you're not okay.
It's okay to take a day off just because you feel like it's too much. It's okay to feel scared, and it's okay to, when something happens to you in a negative situation or if you experience racism, it's okay to tell somebody. I think oftentimes Black students are kind of told to forget about it or not talk about it, but you definitely should, and make sure you take that self-care, and you don't always have to be looking at constant reminders of your oppression all the time.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and engage in this tough conversation. To our Black students and faculty, I hope you felt like your voices were heard and that there is a whole community here at OPRF, whether it's teachers, students, counselors, and more, to love, help, and support you. To everyone, although Black History Month is coming to an end, HYPE encourages you to continue discussing the racism, discrimination, and inequality Black people experience, not just in mental health, but in all aspects of society. Thank you.